Yep, let's get into it. All right. So, hi. Sorry. We got a little bit of a late start. I'd like to point out that Raymond, John's brother, Raymond Holback, and his son, John Holback, got here first, but we did want we wanted to start a little late because some of the family got stuck coming along from a long way away. So thank you for your patience with us starting a little late. We are here to remember our friend, brother, cousin, uncle, co-worker, John Patrick Holback. And I want to welcome family. And they'll hopefully be all sitting over in that area. And friends, neighbors, former co-workers, and also the people who've joined the live stream. And I want to remind everyone that the live stream people can't hear us if we don't come to the microphone if we're going to be talking. So please do that. We didn't know all of John's wishes, but we did know that he wanted a party. And we're doing that. But it felt like we needed a little more time together to process and hang out and remember him in a special way. And so we decided to hold this event here. And it's kind of a DIY thing put on by us. And here at the Palisades Community Church, also called the Palisades Hub, I wanted to tell you all that this church is a non-denominational Protestant church, a little over 100 years old. And it's always been an open and welcoming place, not only as a church. I grew up in this church and they raised me, taught me everything I know. And, but knowing that churches are suffering these days, well, a few years ago, people also started a community organization called the Palisades Hub, so that all the organizations and classes and groups and all the people in the neighborhood who rely on this building will be able to use this building. Also, some of our friends have been running a music venue in the basement for a few years called, and John loved it. So we thought it was appropriate to hold the event up here and the party downstairs. This is not a religious service, but any expressions of faith and spirituality are welcome. And we will want to be sharing our sadness, thinking about memories of John, and I hope also being happy that John was in our lives. And as we go through, we'll tell you things that are going on so you'll know what they are. The first thing that's going on is this. You're all here because you met John in different places, in different ways. You know that he was a collector. He had a way of meeting people and bringing them into his world. And you, after a while, you didn't know where they came from. Like Steve, where one about 10 years ago, I said, "Where did you come from?" And so we thought we'd take a couple minutes if you could look around you and find someone you don't know and tell them your name and how you knew John. And if you want, you can mill about a little. We'll keep it to a couple minutes though. And if you know everyone in the room, just figure it out. So with that, take some moments to meet someone or introduce yourself to someone. Go for it. Go wild. I did. No, I'm gonna I don't like microphones, you know.
I guess probably the day after. Probably. Yeah. Yeah, we used to go
Oh, yeah. Monocle. Yeah.
No, such and such. So I think I heard the news. Well, there's girlfriend. You knew everything about everybody.
Oh, that's a gossip too.
Are you from? You from the area there?
No, I'm but I came to school at Georgetown and stayed ever since.
Oh, really?
So my entire adult life, really. That's where I'm from. That's my first experience. So it's kind of
Okay, I actually worked at. Order in the courtroom. I didn't bring a gavel. Thank you to everyone who has put their effort and love for John into organizing this celebration of his life. Folks are always getting early. Thank you, Lynn, for inviting me to speak. I'm Ed McBride, and John and I were friends for nearly 50 years. We met as freshmen at Georgetown in 1977. And I'm here on behalf of all the many people here whose connection with John started at Georgetown. There are too many here to name one by one, but our stories all intersect and overlap. One of our Georgetown group who I was with yesterday and who can't be here is Mike Lenz. He is on hospice care at his sister's home in Philly. Please keep him in your thoughts and prayers. John lived a full, rich life with a wide arc of friends who he cared deeply about. He was funny, intelligent, great storyteller, a great listener, I mentioned that earlier, and a passionate music and sports fan. In many ways, though he was a study in contrasts, he was a very private person who could also be the social butterfly and party host. He was an adventurous risk taker, but he also cared about tradition, especially family traditions. I first saw John's risk-taking trait in the very early days. I and many of the Georgetown crew lived on the first floor of Darnell Hall as freshmen. And like many red-blooded, often inebriated 18-year-old guys, we enjoyed playing pranks on people, including dousing unsuspecting victims with buckets of water. John did not live on First Darnell. He lived on another floor of the building. But he became an honorary and revered member of First Darnell when he joined us as a mercenary and pulling off our most daring prank, donning a trench coat and bomb mask and bucketing someone in their dorm room, and then escaping undetected. And for many years, no one knew who that masked man was. After graduation, a number of us decided to stay in DC and put our Georgetown degrees to work. Except it was the time of the Reagan recession, and there wasn't much call for foreign service majors like John or American studies majors like me. John eventually landed a job at a health food store in DuPont Circle, and I joined him a little while later. Hen and Jamie Kramer also worked there. The business soon failed. But that was only a coincidence. Anyway, we had fun, and I got to enjoy John's non-stop comic commentary and pet names for regular customers. It was Mr. Milk, Mr. Bread, and all in good humor. It was during that time that we also became neighbors in what was then a somewhat sketchy neighborhood, Adams Morgan. My wife Betsy and I got our first apartment together there, and John lived a few buildings away. We spent a lot of time together and enjoyed going out to shows, especially going to see the Slicky Boys. In 1985, Betsy and I moved to New Jersey for me to go to school. Not long after that, John showed his risk-taking, adventurous side again when he bought his condo on Willard Street, and what was definitely the urban frontier near 14th and U Street at the time. John made that place, later dubbed Wilhelmstrasse, his lifelong home. It was unique, just like John. The small windows allowed in very little light, which was fitting for a Rolling Stones fan whose favorite lyrics included, "The sunshine pours the daylights out of me." His honor, we have the shoes here today.
Yes.
John and I also shared a connection as to our roots. We both were from Philly, me from the city itself and John from nearby Westchester. And like most people from Philly, the Jersey Shore was a big part of our lives growing up. So it was very cool that Betsy and I and our kids were able to have lots of memorable times with John and his family in Sea Isle City. His nieces and nephews and our kids loved hanging with John, especially enjoying the occasional cursing outbursts. I was joking earlier with Lynn's son Richard and people of his generation. I think all of them learned curse words from John. Another benefit of our shared Philly roots was our shared passion for Philly sports teams. Meaning no disrespect to the sacred space that we're in. I think John would appreciate my wardrobe choices today.
Yes.
Over the last few years, John had to endure a lot of health challenges that were especially tough because of their effect on his independence. And I'm sure I speak for the entire Georgetown gang, and for that matter, everyone here, when I say thank you to John's core DC family who cared for him so lovingly. Lynn, Sylvia, Minap, with help from Jamie Kramer, you, Jamie Daly, and Mark and Lynn. In the last conversation Betsy and I had with John, he told us he was at peace with his circumstances. He also said, quote, "I've had a good run. I know we're all better off for having been with John on his good run." Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ray Holback. I'm John's brother. And geez, thanks, Eddie. It's kind of a tough act to follow. I'm not much of a public speaker, but I did jot down a few notes, just some kind of random snapshots and memories. And I don't think I can read my own writing, so I'm going to need my glasses here. So, first of all, I want to thank all of his friends who cared for him in his last days, especially Sylvia, Maya, Lynn, Jamie, not to forget his entire menagerie of friends who were in and out bringing food and fellowship. There were times he confided to me that it was a little overwhelming at times. I told him if he didn't make so many friends, maybe he wouldn't have that problem. But believe me, he appreciated all of it, really did. I was always amazed at John's ability to keep track of friends and relatives. In conversation, he had to remind me of who, what, and where. It seemed he was familiar with everyone's sofa, too. Yeah. He liked to travel on cheap. He loved to visit people. He loved everybody. John liked to use my house as home base whenever he came up to our area. His beloved PT Cruiser was a welcome sight in the driveway, and I can picture him coming down the walkway with his luggage, usually a plastic garbage bag with his spare clothes and some other stuff. Then came the time when the drive was no longer an option, and I would pick him up at the train station with his cane and his suitcase on wheels. A trip to Perkins for a scrapple breakfast was always mandatory, and we spent many hours on my back porch talking about family, politics, and life. It's a very private where I live, and John always rebelled in the luxury of urinating out in the backyard. It was like to save water, you know. Then the visit stopped, and we had many 4 a.m. phone conversations. He could rely on me to answer the phone when he needed me, and I was, happy to talk to him early in the morning. He kept saying he was getting stronger and he'd be back as soon as he could. We kind of thought we hoped that was the case, and we'd sit back on the back porch early in the morning and have coffee and cigarettes and talk about stuff. But then our conversations turned to the inevitable. And he was at peace, but he was scared at the same time. I told him he can't go yet. He needed to help me enroll in Medicare. When we got, when we were gathering the photos for the service, they were filled with memories of him with my children, grandchildren, friends, and family. He's left a void that cannot be filled. So I feel fortunate to have been with him on May 9th. Very early that day, with the help of his aide, we gave him a sponge bath and combed his hair and clipped his nails and got him all cleaned up, tidied up the bedding. He had been largely unresponsive for some time, but he allowed us to do that. He did let you know when he didn't want you to do something, and he let that happen. And I had brought a guitar along with me. I thought you might like to hear me play a few things. And while I was playing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, his mouth was moving in time with the lyrics. So that was a really touching moment for me. But later that day, he took his last breath. And it was with great honor to see him off to his final journey. He was convinced he would beat Dad and all who had left before him. So I'm sorry for a sad ending. There's been some time to grieve, but I don't think life will be the same without him. So once again, many thanks for making it possible for us to gather here to celebrate John's life. And for me, and I'm sure for everybody else, the happy memories by far exceed the sad. So thank you all.
So, John and I are both real big Buzzcocks fans. We went and saw Buzzcocks a bunch of times. And when he was unresponsive, we were lucky enough to spend the last couple of days with me and Sylvia and Mike, and Pamphlet was there. And Kramer had a guitar over there, played some songs, and I played this song, and you could tell he was kind of unresponsive, but he was digging it. And then I started playing this like kind of a sad country song, and you could tell he disapproved. but, you know, like I said, John and I are big Buzzcocks fans. So you recognize the song, you all know it, you know when to go, whoa! You know when to go, all right? When I'm Mark New, John and I was adopted by the whole Georgetown crowd. Thank God for you all. Great group of friends, including Holback. This is my better half. This is Linda Coquinos. We've been together for 20 years.
Just wanna
Good afternoon, everyone. And mine just said, Raymond had a hard act to follow, so I got to add Raymond and Mark. My name is Stephen McTeague, and I met John at the Sheet Metal Workers Pension Fund. I started working there in April of '83 when John started. We were co-workers until the end of November of '91 when I left. And I wanted to talk a little bit about John at work. And I've asked Mark and Kate to keep it straight if I veer off incorrectly here. One of the things about John that you knew instantly, he was a good guy, he was friendly, but he was also very, very smart, had a lot going on. John told me once, and only once, that he was offered a full ride academic scholarship down to UVA, which he turned down. And John wanted to go to school in the big city. And as nice as Charlottesville is, it's not really a big city then or even now. But John had a big picture view of things. I remember when he and I started working together in the audit department, we were still with pencils and papers. I don't know if John read an article or if he maybe was visiting New York or maybe visiting Steve up in Boston. But he decided that we had to get a laptop. Back in those days, laptop was a new thing. So he put together a business case for our fund administrator to get a laptop for our department. He was successful, did a cost benefit analysis, and that was going to help us. And I seem to recall that first laptop cost the fund $2,400. And that's in $1,985, but triple that now. But he got that, and then his other auditors came on. Mark, I'm not sure if he got one when he first came on, but he managed to get business cases for the rest of them as well. And then after I left, anecdotally, I heard from John, there was our administrator, I think some people in the union were allegations of fiduciary irresponsibility, let's put it that way. And John was called upon to provide a lot of information to the new board of trustees about things that might have been going on. We wanted to get to the bottom of what was going on. John and his staff and other folks that are here today helped him pull that information together, and he did a good job with that. Soon afterwards, there was a third party that came in to administer the fund. John had a lot of information. I guess when they were doing their due diligence, John and staff, people that are here, had to pull a lot of information together as well. And then finally, with the financial crisis, 2008, 2009, talking to John, I think it was a really, at least from what I understood from him, was a big chance that the fund might be having it taken over by the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. Again, John was able to get these different databases to talk to each other, and pull reports, and give the trustees what they needed for their meetings, special meetings, and all the staff members as well. And I saw a combination, I never saw it before. Mine and I were doing some paperwork, and the combination of the board trustees when he finally did retire in 2011. And I know we have some of John's neighbors here, I believe. He took that same diligence to his job as a treasurer on the Condo Board Association. I think he did it for a number of years. And Paul Perry was the president for a while, and John was a treasurer. He stepped away from that for his health issues. But I think John couldn't totally step away. There's a lot of institutional knowledge there. So John, if there were any questions, John would help out. And I think as Ed mentioned, kept everything. We were going through some papers the other day. And apparently there were some issues in the late 90s, early 2000s with your dumpster out back in the alley. I think when DC, when the district, they needed a ticket quota to fill or some revenue quotas to fill, they would go back and issue a ticket on the dumpster back there. But John had it and stapled it in his response, for a third party trash collector was the cause of the problem back there. And I also know that he kept a very good eye on the condo association finances. I saw several letters to the management company saying, hey, you didn't credit us this, or you should have credited us that. John kept a lot of things, under his thumb and just on top of things at work and at home as well. And I would like to say one thing to make John, to your cousins. We've talked a little bit about John's piece with everything again. He was very open. He was very, had a good run. I think if John had only one regret, it's not living long enough to see how you guys are going to turn out. And I know that you're all, none of you are teenagers, none of you were in grade school, but John was proud of you guys. We love you all. And I think that we're going to see. I know you're doing well, and it's an honor to him to be very, very, very happy. So thank you all very much.
Hi, I'm Beth Ann. I'm the baby of the family, John's baby sister. Probably have heard him referred to
guess I wasn't expecting from something this formal, but
It's not formal. We're on camera.
but kind of interesting when you were talking about the treasurer part of John and the finance part of John, and you know, we always felt that with him growing up and saw that, and especially the day after Halloween when it came time to trade candy, and no trades. All John had to approve all trades. So I'm thinking, oh, he might owe me a Hershey bar somewhere. But he was always looking out for us as he was looking out for his condo, and he was our big brother and he was our leader. You know, like I think we kind of feel a little brotherless without him, but you know, he was a big presence and guided us a lot, and he was someone to go to for advice, and it was always good advice, and you know, that I always took to heart. And another thing about John was he was always, you know, he was kind to his friends and his family and everything. He was always really kind to animals, and I always thought that's such a good judge of character of how people treat animals and those who are vulnerable and needy. And I always, you know, felt touched by that. And I guess I was really, I'm kind of rambling now. None of this is, I'm just speaking off the cuff now, but the one thing I was just going to share was, you know, I'm 5 years younger than John, and I was, you know, in my room one summer night, and I was just hanging out reading, and he was going out with his friends, and he was walking down the hall, and he said, you know, you should read this book, and he handed me The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. I'm guessing we've all read that book, and so he handed me the book and went out, and I proceeded to read the entire book that night. And you know, it's a very good book. And so in a way, I just wanted the one part of the book that was very touching between Johnny and Pony Boy was that you know, the Robert Frost poem, Nothing Gold Can Stay, which goes as nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold, her early leaves of flower, but only so an hour. So as leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief. As dawn goes down to day, nothing gold can stay. And I guess that's how I feel about my brother. And I hope he's in a golden place right now, and he's a wonderful person. Thank you so much for being his friend and honoring him with this day. Thank you.
Thanks, Bethany. My name is Mina, and I'm a friend of John's. And I am here to introduce the opening of the open mic session, but I wanted to say a couple of words first. We were talking in the other room earlier, and I said, you know, I think John would be mildly embarrassed at what's happening here today, to be the center of attention in this way. But I also think he would be secretly thrilled. And I know he's gonna love the dessert bar downstairs. John was one of the most generous people I knew. And he treasured his friendships, and he was a wonderful communicator. He kept in touch with people. There are in his apartment just hordes of letters and cards that people wrote back to him. And he was just a wonderful correspondent. He always wished people happy birthday. He was the first to send a prayer card when people's family or friends passed away. And his generosity of spirit just has to live on in all of us, and I know it will. He also deeply loved his family, especially his nieces and nephews. And what Steve said is true. If he had one regret, it was that he's not around to see what happens to you guys. And that was brought home to me this past week. I was talking with John's financial advisor, and she had been instructed by John to please have a conversation with each of his nieces and nephews about how they can benefit from what he has left them. And she's taken that to heart and very much wanted to reach out to you and be here today. But she called me earlier and she left a message on my phone with a quote that I wanted to share with you. And I think it's really appropriate to honor John. And it's by Ralph Waldo Emerson. To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived, this is to have succeeded. And I think John was very successful in his life. One of the correspondents that he had was his friend Peter in London, Peter Jovanovich. Hope I'm saying that right. Sorry, Peter, if you're watching. I'm really sorry, Peter. And so I wanted to share with you what he sent to us. Peter was at the Mass in Pennsylvania that John's family held at the end of May. And he was thinking that he would make some comments, but he did not wind up doing that. And so he sent them to us, and I want to share with you what he had written. He went to visit John's mom the day before the Mass and spent some time with friends that evening in the pub, as it were. So I just wanted to, and after he went home, he actually annotated his remarks with photographs and documented it for us, so we have evidence of these travels. And if you'd like to see him, come see me after this. So just imagine that I'm a 6'2" British man now. I'm not gonna do the accent, but I hope I'll do it justice. Peg informed me that back in the early 70s, John wanted to be Prince Andrew's pen pal, but his nanny politely declined his request. I therefore stepped up to the plate and thus began a 53-year friendship. Similarly, Prince Andrew couldn't be present at John's funeral either, so here I was once again present in his place. Prince Andrew's loss is my gain. I will always cherish his memories forever, of which the following stand out. Running up Tottenham Court Road as boisterous teenagers to catch the last train home after watching Jesus Christ Superstar on stage, knowing that my father would be waiting at our local station to pick us up. Remember, this was way before mobile phones, and the only way to contact him was via my parents' house from a public phone box. How my mother would have contacted my father, who would have left by this time, I don't know, as then we were a one-car family. I'm happy to say we just made the train. Another memory, my first trip to Stetson's a decade later. I had been on a trip to New York, but first visited John in DC, and we joyfully strode into Stetson's and persuaded this one waitress to join us in quite a few tequila shots at the bar. The hangover the next morning was, thankfully, short-lived. I could handle my drink in those days. And we duly visited Stetson's again that evening. The same waitress was on duty, saw us as she came out of the kitchen and shouted, "Hell no!" Then rapidly disappeared back into the kitchen. Mobile phones, as we know them now, still didn't exist, and I had no time for cameras in what was a drunken phase of my life then. Years later, John was on a European tour and stayed with us for a few days over the turn of the year into 2014. He joined a band of our friends on our annual New Year's Day walk across open countryside in all weathers that would normally last from 3 to 8 miles, and certainly involve a pub at the end of it, if not another on the journey. This was really the first time I noticed that John had a problem with his leg, which made the walk uncomfortable for him at best. Despite having to stop several times to rest up, he carried on, and we both caught up with the other walkers at our end destination, a pub beside a castle not far from where I live, where we enjoyed the lunch of champions, cheesy chips and beer, whilst drying off in front of a log fire. Funnily enough, the pub was called Castle Inn. Tabby's health scare in 2017 put our lives into perspective, and we began a series of adventures that took us all around the world, into Europe, New Zealand, Hong Kong, and the Caribbean. But our first port of call was to DC for a week with John. We spent the Sunday at a local Philly sports bar in DC watching his Eagles beat the Rams in LA in their run to winning the Super Bowl that year. Anyone remember that? John was a very happy man. In the run-up to John's 60th birthday, we chatted, and he wanted to do something different than the usual birthday celebrations. And I believe he had planned another European tour with a little twist, a visit to Morocco, specifically Marrakesh. Both Tabby and I were very happy to meet up with him, and with my own 60th birthday approaching 3 months later, we rented an Airbnb in the Medina quarter of Tangier, rich with the narrow passages and the busy souks, which was quite quirky, but little did we realize how quirky this place would be. The host was very kind and arranged for someone to visit us each morning and supply us with breakfast of our choosing, which was an excellent value. The house was quite narrow and had several floors, but accompanied them with steep steps, particularly through the front door. John navigated these with relative ease at a slow pace, and we were graced with fantastic views across Tangier from the roof, where incidentally his bedroom was adjacent to. There are some pictures here of that, which are really nice. Having spent several days here, we took the ferry to Spain and then crossed over into Gibraltar, where we slugged it from pub to pub before we decided that an air of decadence was needed, and we drank large gin and tonics in the marina, which was overflowing with disgustingly expensive yachts, sadly owned by other people. Nonetheless, it was a lovely end to his birthday celebration. No gin for John, though, just his usual vodka and cranberry juice. A lot of good memories here. I'm reminded of John meeting my mother for the first time when we were both still teenagers and on his first visit to the UK. My mother, an ex-school teacher and headmistress, recognized the qualities in John that I think we all appreciate and quickly took him under her wing. But first she said, "You've had a long journey," and told him to get upstairs and have a shower whilst she would wash his laundry before feeding us. John started to protest that she needn't bother, but I had to pull him aside and tell him that his words would fall on deaf ears. My mother didn't take no for an answer, and he should just say yes. My mother and John got on very well with each other over the years until she sadly passed away in 2014. Like us, she always looked forward to his postcards and Christmas cards, which were witty and described his latest adventures. John, you are kind, funny, intelligent, and very rock and roll, all wrapped up in the warmth of your nature. Tabby and I consider you to be our dear friend and my big brother. You leave a hole in our lives, and I look forward to meeting up with you once again in due course. That is, if Prince Andrew isn't available. Your friendship was immeasurable to me and everyone else's lives you touched. Rest in peace, my brother. And that's Peter. I'd like to commence the open mic portion of the program, and we would love to hear stories like Peter was kind enough to share with us. I would just ask that you come up to the podium because, as Lynn said, we can't hear you if you're not in front of the microphone. And get close to the microphone like you're a professional rock and roll musician, because we'll hear you better. Who wants to come up and say something?
I'll go first.
There you go. This is John's nephew, John.
Yeah. Hello, also John Holback. Same name, slightly more handsome. I didn't prepare anything, but while you were all sharing memories, I started thinking of some of my memories of my Uncle John. The first one was when I was in elementary school. It was book day. If you remember book day, you get to leave lunch for a few minutes and buy books and erasers and things. He had written me a blank check for book day, which was very generous. So I picked out what I wanted. He showed me how to fill out the check for how much money it was. But in the memo, he did not write books or pencils. He elected to write rat poison. I was in third grade. That was really, really great. So a lot of other memories too, but that's one of my earliest ones. Thought you would appreciate a humor, just like I did too. So thank you for coming today. Thanks.
I saw somebody else back there. Just tell us who you are.
Hi, everybody. My name is Beth Gay. And I actually came to DC the same year that John did. I'm from South Jersey, and I went to Catholic U, and he was in Georgetown. But I was fortunate enough to meet him about 15 years ago when John, my husband, went to a show, one of Mark New's shows. And all those years, John is a Washingtonian. He grew up here. They kind of grew up together. Read into that whatever you want. But we didn't meet John until like 15 years ago. And so I want to tell you how sorry I am, all of you, for your loss. So you've known John for 30, 40, 50 years, and all of your lives. And so, like, knowing John is knowing how deep your sorrow must be. So when you met John, I'm guessing that you were instantly charmed by his smile. And then he captured you with his kindness because he just couldn't contain it. Not knowing John as long as you, he's like this shooting star going across the sky for me. I was on that trip, I guess it was 2020. John and I, my husband, they were on Facebook, and John was like, I want to go to see the Marrakesh Express. And your John said, oh, I'll go with you. I have a lot of friends in Europe. And so we went to London, and then we went to a fest. So John was traveling around, and he met up with us in London and fest. So when we were in Morocco in Old Fest, I got to have some quality time with John because the two of us were really low energy, and everybody else was walking like John and I were low energy. We fell behind. I'm grateful for the quality time that I spent with him. And one thing I learned was how much he cared and loved his dear friend Julie, who's over there, Julie. And so obviously what I've heard here, I can say, we all know John's great capacity for love. Well, him being from Philly and me from South Jersey, we shared a love of Giovanni's Deli in Seattle City, where we each had, we discovered the very best subs in the world, Italian subs in Giovanni's. And I'm just grateful for having known John, and for knowing you, his friends, and I hope that all your memories will bring you peace.
Hello, everybody. My name is Richie. I am Thor's son, and I've been tasked with kind of talking for the younger generation of the friend group who all knew John. So one of the things, Ed, you talked about was John teaching all of us how to curse. Chris, you were talking about one of the things that really endeared John to the younger generation was he listened to us. You know, he asked a lot of questions about us. He wanted to know a lot about us. And I think one of the things that also goes along with that is John kind of treated us like we were adults. You know, he didn't treat us like kids. And there's a lot of people in here who have known me for a really long time. I'm not trying to say you all treated me like kids. You know, he really treated us like we were like a good friend of his all the time. And you know, some of that goes with the things that we would do together. So John, we would go to a lot of Nationals games together whenever the Phillies were in town. You know, also with Michael Hennessy, with Derek. Unfortunately, a lot of Philly fans, but sometimes I did have Steve on my side. And you know, we would go to those games. It's not like he was bringing a child to the game with him. He was bringing, you know, just another friend to be part of the group. That's not to say that they didn't try to mess with me. There was a time there was a beer soaked Oreo on the ground in front of us. John offered me $5 to eat it. And I said no, that's not enough money to do that. But then I think Hennessy, Derek was there, Steve, they were there. There was $5 from everybody else. And so I did eat the beer soaked Oreo. Maybe that was $20 that day. And you know, John brought me to my first hockey game. Obviously, Caps Flyers, go Caps. Sorry. And again, you know, he knew it was something I would love. He knew it was something I would really like, and he wanted it to be something that I experienced. And this was probably his favorite story to tell with me. You know, I went to this hockey game, and I knew a little bit about hockey, but not a ton. And by the end of the game, you know, I was best friends with everyone in the stands next to us, and we were all trash talking John. He loved it, and you know, that was something he really relished, was giving me and everyone else in this generation those kind of experiences. And he always had the best comeback for the trash talk. Was his favorite picture of him holding me as like a 2-day-old baby and saying, "No." It's in the slideshow, so you'll see it. But you know, he knew me when I was pooping my pants. So, so yeah, well, I really miss John. Thank you, I appreciate it.
It was less serious this time. Ed had mentioned and Rand mentioned, you know, John went to sporting events, and I think as it turned out, we went together to the last Flyers Caps game back in November, and we were kind of pointing. The Phillies are here in September, March. After we got back to the beach, we're kind of pointing towards that. John would be able to ready to go. It didn't work out. But some of the best times we had, John and I, Mark Patrick, and another friend of ours, Steve Sims, 2 or 3 times a year we go to the racetrack, Rosecroft, down across the bridge over here, Fort Washington, Maryland. Dan Sheen went with several times as well. And we would go there and we'd all share our, with the racing floor, we'd share our notes, you know, we'd discuss that horse. And we'd all place our bets, and of course we bet something else, we don't need any information, this is that information that I have. And maybe every 3rd or 4th race, John would have a good luck cigarette before the race. And if any of us won, we would go to the bar and have a victory shot. But this one particular night, I guess we'd all lost some money. So we're getting ready to go back to the office, and we had changed. We didn't have our work clothes. We always wore a change of clothes. We went to the track. So this one night we're heading home. I'm driving, John's next to me. And he said, "Let's go see Teal." And Teal was a woman that we worked with named Brenda Teal. And she had a part-time job at a restaurant about a mile south of the racetrack. So we all said, "Yeah, let's go see Teal." So we hop in our drive down, we go into the restaurant, Scruffy Bottoms, the 4 of us. And John goes to the hostess stand, and he said, "Very politely, is Brenda Teal here to see you?" And we said, "Yeah." So we're friends of hers, can we say hello? said, "Oh, so Brenda," she said, "Sure, we'll get her." And those of us who knew Brenda, she always had a smile on her face, very, very happy, very nice person, good personality. The type of person, if you felt bad, you talked to her, you felt good afterwards. So about 30 seconds later, a minute later, Teal comes around the corner with her smile, and then she sees who it is, and the smile disappears. And she starts shaking her head going, "No, no, 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 no." She said, this is a nice restaurant. You guys gotta get out of here. So John, I can't do a John laugh, but you all know a John laugh. And Teal walked up to him, as I recall, grabbed him lightly by the shoulder, still saying no, and turned him around gently, grabbed him by the scruff of the neck, a fist in the back, and said, "You guys got to push him, John, told you guys gotta go, you guys gotta go." And we're all laughing, and Teal's laughing at this point as well. So we left without an incident. And Brenda, the type of woman that she was, the next morning, John and I shared an office at that point. And Teal came in and she was all apologetic. "You know, I'm sorry I had to do that, but it's a nice restaurant. You guys want to dress for it." And you know, John, sort of. So Brenda don't worry about this. It's no big deal. We laugh about it. But a postscript to this is Brenda was also studying at that point for a degree in mathematics. She had a degree undergrad, which was going for a postgrad degree, and she subsequently got a job at a community college in Prince George's County as a math teacher. And she called John shortly thereafter, and she was dismayed, disappointed, whatever the word we want to use is, with the lack of preparation for some of her incoming students. And she offered John a job as a math tutor. And John could not, and she said, Teal said, "You know, I know you can't quit your day job, but tell me what hours you can work after work is fine, when over weekends." And John couldn't at that point. I think that's when the 18 PLAs had come in. And he and I think you guys as well might have been the day we're not the local lot. John could not do it. But he told me a few months later about it. He said he was intrigued by being a math tutor. And he said in an alternate timeline or whatever, he might have really enjoyed being a math tutor. And he told me that was going to be might be his retirement job. But he retired, of course, the travel block. So, and to Ray's point, the Phillies are going to be here. We're kind of pointing to that game. And it's not going to happen. So anyway, thank you all very much.
Hey everybody, Betsy of Ed Netsy. Known John a long time, love him dearly. And one of the things that I just wanted to remind us all is how he could crack himself up. I mean, this guy could just have this snicker that would just start and he couldn't control it. It just took off. And you had to wait because he couldn't even speak. He had to laugh for a while before he could talk. And then it never came off as funny to anybody else. I often watched John brood. He was a broody kind of guy, you know, sometimes he would just sit quietly, and I sometimes thought that, you know, I'd done something wrong, because that's where I go, but no, he just wanted to, you know, sit and think, particularly in the ocean. And for anybody who was able to be on the beach with John, you got to see all those pieces of him kind of come together. And Jamie would go for a walk down the beach. Sometimes these walks would be really long, and he'd come back and he'd just like plop on the sand next to him, and we would all be just sitting there. No words needed to be spoken. It was just as it was. I think about how much he helped all of us and how personal his relationship with everybody was. It was personal to you when you were with him. And I think that's why there's so many people here, because you had a personal relationship with him. It's not, you didn't come because of somebody else, you came because of him. And I would be remiss to not mention that in this space, we've said goodbye to a few other people. And in other spaces around DC. And we've been at Garrett's together. And I just think about the jokes that he's going to tell Dan, Beth, Piggy, Maud, and Sherry, and then they're just gonna crack up with him, and that's all I got, you know. I just really I just will always remember his snicker and how he would just crack himself up and have his faces at the pool. You know, there was John's spot. There was a spot at the beach, and there was a spot here. There, you know, that's where John was. That's where you find him, you know. And Ray's back porch, I'm sure too. Thank you.
I'm Mark Noon, a lot of you know me. I was going to tell the story before the team brought this up. So how many people here were tutored math by Holback? See, so I'm like an adopted guy. Like, my mom couldn't have kids. I was adopted by my parents. I went to middle school, and it's a boarding school. I got out of there, went to Gonzaga, didn't have any friends. I was adopted by Glover Park, Alan Atkinson, and John Gay, and all those friends of mine from that. I was adopted. And then I was adopted by the Georgetown crowd. And then Sylvia and y'all, very happy to be here, which included Holback. I don't know if y'all know that enough about me. So when I turned 50, I never got a degree. I went to music school and played bands. And then I figured I'd get a degree at some point in my life. And so I went to University of Maryland, got a psychology degree. And I had to complete, this is just murder, but I had to complete 3 semesters of college level algebra. Like, what a nightmare. So of course, you know, this is like it's adult education, you put it off as long as you can. So I got everything done. My last 3 courses that I did were the 3 math courses. And so I felt like I had the math department at MIT getting me through this. But my friend Sophia and John Holback got me through math at the University of Maryland. And so I'll never forget, this was one night, I was over at his apartment where he was tutoring me. I went over there on the day I was going, it was the day after Linda's birthday, and I'm like, oh shit, this is Holback's birthday. And he's tutoring me on his birthday, stopped off at the liquor store, got a big bottle of vodka, and I went over there. And so like, I'm sorry, it's your birthday, you're tutoring me. He goes, that's fine, just sit down. So we were working on these quadratic equations. I can't even say that. And so it was like something that was like, you know, 2,000 over, you know, 2,000 minus, you know, 1,500 equals X, and all this components, and all. I had no idea, because Mark, just put it in your own perspective. Put it in your own perspective. This is something you deal with all the time, you don't even know. Okay, you're at the 930 Club. Your guarantee is $2,000. You get a breaking point at 1,500, and that's everybody. After that point, you get X. And I was like, oh yeah, 1,750 plus the $2,000. So that was, oh yeah, okay. He had this way of putting things in a personal perspective to you, to everybody, to me. I'm sure we all experienced it. You know, God bless the guy. All right.
Wow, thank you everybody for that. I don't want to keep us much longer before we go to the fest. But I did want to reiterate some of the themes that I've been hearing, and all of which I have experienced myself. I actually got to know John. I knew him as the Georgetown young person, but I got to know him more closely more recently when he used to take care of our dog Molly at our pool, our home that he called Club Dana. During COVID, he would visit often. He enjoyed the gatherings we were able to have outside, and that really compassionate, kind, personal, you know, that person. I got to know later he was just like a cool guy before that this was something special. And that humor that everybody mentioned here, it lasted right to the end. I mean, literally, people would come into his beautiful apartment, the hospice workers, the aides, the people delivering things. Like, wow, what a cool place. And he'd be like, what you'd expect of a man of wealth and taste. His encyclopedic knowledge of music, his love for music, the way he would get us all tickets and talk about what bands we were gonna go to, that really thoughtful person, that generous person, and that grateful person. He was the guy who always had the thank you gift, the thing that made you feel lucky to have done him a favor. He just knew how to be that person. And that's smart, all of you mentioned that too. He's smart, diligent, knew his politics, was always interesting to talk to, and compassionate. He really understood when someone needed a hand, and he was willing to go out of his way and take risks for people, particularly for young people. I know that friends that would come to our house who needed a job, he would connect them to somebody. He gave them his name, my own son. He gave a connection with a close friend of his in New York, who he now works for. And it's a match made in heaven. John knew that that would work. And he went out on a limb and said, I think this will work. He was just that guy. And we heard it here at his family man. He's a family man. He was a friend. He made everybody feel like he was the best friend. He was an animal lover that was mentioned, which was great too. He didn't suffer fools. If we were lucky enough to be his friend, we had something going on too. And we should all feel good about ourselves for having been included in his circle. We're lucky to be here today. And he was just really that guy who we're gonna miss, but that we're gonna carry with us. He's gonna be there, we're gonna remember that, we're gonna hear that snicker, we're gonna hear that joke, we're gonna see his offspring that he was so, the offspring of his family that he was so proud of. We're gonna remember all of that, and I will still hear his advice. He loved his friends really dearly, and he made sure we loved each other too. He made us step up for each other. Hey, so-and-so needs a hand, give them a hand. So-and-so needs you, this is your field. He would do it. He knew exactly what people needed, and I think he'll be looking out for us. And I'm glad Betsy mentioned the folks we've lost, because I still remember so clearly him speaking at our dear friend Dan Sheehan's funeral. And he said with total conviction, he's not a guy who went to church, but he was a man of faith. And he said, and he believed that he was gonna see Dan. He said, I'll see it on the other side. And he really honestly felt that. And I also have visions of him enjoying, reconnecting with his dad, reconnecting with Dan, reconnecting with the all too many names of the people that we lost too early. And even John, we lost too early. But like I said, we'll still have him. And thank you guys all so much for caring for me.
Please, yes.
Hello, everybody. My name is James Liu. I thought I'd just offer an additional glimpse into Uncle John, or UJ, as he asked us to call him. I married into the family. My wife is Sarah, who's sitting in the back with my other children. This is one of them, who is Ray Holback's daughter. So just two reflections. I think there's nothing quite like the character of a person that you can tell by their willingness to accept little children into their laps. And every time we would go to Ray's house, our kids would either jump right into UJ's lap or they needed to be coaxed there. But he also took a really special joy into taking pictures of my kids, which really touched me in a way that I'll never forget. And I really did think of him as UJ and Uncle John, who loved them as their own, and took a lot of pride in sharing them, as some of you may have seen in his social media posts and such. I do also wanted to mention, like this picture here of Uncle
Uncle John, you took that picture. It's one of my favorites. I've been to the Outer Banks maybe once, but I think we've been inspired to go in honor of EJ, I think in the coming years. And I read somewhere that something about the beauty of a sunset and sunrise is it's part of a continuous stream of them. They're beautiful because you always expect the next one to come, right? Dipping above or dipping below the horizon. And I imagine John having these year after year experiences in the Outer Banks as being someone who really loved them in such a beautiful way. But I also feel like with that picture there that you took, this lovely picture, I choose to believe also like in his final moments too, there's something beautiful there too. And I think he's just a reminder for us that there's such beauty in life in a way that's lived in such a beautiful way. So, we love Uncle John, we loved him very much. And I thank you for having us be part of this gathering and celebration too. Thank you.
We have more of those hugs for the rest of us. Come on.
So I met John late '90s. Doug Plain introduced me to him. I came to work with Stetsons. And there was a 3-pack: Kramer, John, and Chew. And these guys came pretty regularly. Great, wonderful gentlemen, stuff like that. John and I's friendship grew through our music. Love that. I briefly worked with him at the Sheet Metal Workers Union pension fund for a little while. He was helping me out, when I visited the transaction in between before I got full time at Stetsons and things like that. And the funny things, especially the sports fan part, was that there was one time it was like a triple overtime. We had to close. Well, we couldn't close because we could not see the end of the Flyers. I think it was Flyers and Caps. It was like one of the longest games probably in history. And here's John in the bar, and every time they wouldn't score, we're like, Doug's like, we gotta go. It's like, 3 o'clock in the morning, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. It's like, finally, I think the Flyers did get one in there, after 4 or 5 overtimes. John was elated, got to go home. But he was always, there for the next day of work and things like that. He was very proud of his family. He always talked about you guys, every time I talked to him, things like that. High point in his life and things like that. And, the rest of the staff, some of them couldn't make it here today. They wanted to send their condolences. Life goes on, but his life will be missed. And we thank you for sharing it with us.
I hope you'll all share more stories when we go downstairs. We're gonna have a bigger party down there when we get down there. First we're gonna hear from this motley crew. And this, they're just themselves.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jamie Daly, one of the Georgetown crew. This is the other Jamie. Jamie plays guitar.
Yeah, that one.
I'm Mark Moon, by the way. Don't forget that.
This is offered in the spirit of John's annual party, where he would print out lyrics to songs and we would do sing-alongs. So you're all invited to sing along with the words that you know to this song.
And not just the chorus.
Not just the chorus, the whole thing.
Sing wherever you want. Drown us out. Sorry, help me if I forget the words. She would never say where she came from. Yesterday don't matter, it's gone. All the sun is bright. Oh, For in the darkest night, comes and goes. Goodbye, Ruby Tuesday, good evening, Mommy. When you change with everything, still I'm gonna miss you. Don't question why she needs to be so free. She'll tell you it's the only way. She just can't be changed to a life where nothing's gained. Oh, such a cost. Goodbye, who could when you change with every new day, still I'm gonna miss you. There's no time to lose, I heard her say. Catch your dreams before they slip away. Dying all the time, your dreams and you, your mind, life unkind. Goodbye, Ruby Tuesday. When you change with everything, still I'm gonna miss you. Goodbye, Ruby Tuesday. Good evening, when you change with everything, still I'm gonna miss you.
I just wanted to say that, I feel like today is a journey John brought us on. He took us all on lots of adventures, and we heard about some of them. Just always making a plan, gotta get tickets to this thing, go to that thing, travel to that place. That last month's, weeks, days, I'm not sure, he took us on a different journey, and it was a little rough sometimes. The Team John that had come together was stretched a bit beyond our knowledge and capabilities. We had some help. I want to call out one of the aides who helped John after he broke his hip, and then there at the last days was Workmish, who's here with us today, and I want to take inspired me so much with how much she cared for John and came to know all of us, put up with us, and we're so honored you were with us that day. And we all had worked hard and got challenged a bit. And a few, like Sylvia and mine, I got a little wrapped around it, frankly. And when Raymond came one night, I don't know, we were fussing around and doing our fussing around, control freak, whatever thing. And I think the really sweetest words I've ever heard from a sibling were, you sat down on the couch, Raymond, and you said, I think it's time for you ladies to go home. For other time, and I have a feeling John was like, thank God. I was trying to think of words of wisdom from John to close up to Yeah, mine and I were talking about a quote for the card. By the way, I wanna remind you, we have a little card if you didn't get one at the back, and if there are loved ones who aren't here, please, they're in a basket in the back, and we'll have them downstairs to take them for people who knew John and loved him. I was like, Maya, I was trying to think all day of a quote, and I just remember this one thing, and I guess it does kind of sum up me and John. He used to say to me more than once, you know, you should really proofread your text messages. We thought, John, we're gonna go downstairs. And like I said, we knew John and wanted a party, so we're gonna have that. And we will have food and drinks and socializing, and we have a playlist of 5 hours that Linda put together. We can dance if we want. There's outdoor space. You can go out this back door and picnic tables. Anything you need, just ask one of us and we'll get it for you. We hope you will stay and enjoy and have fun. But we also felt like John deserved a bit of a gesture. How do we end a thing like this? You know, and I tried to think like, well, we know we love music, so there's no end of possibilities there, but it needs to be a little grandiose, possibly a little pompous even. And like Mina said, he would be irritated by all this attention on him, but secretly, I think he would like something like that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna sit here and listen to a song, and many of you will know this song. And it's a little, you know, meta, it's a little self-referential for our generation. You're gonna have to sit there anyway. And maybe we'd like to reflect on our sadness and our loss, but also on the fun things we've heard today, the insights all of you have shared, and I hope be grateful for John in our lives and also for all the other family and loved ones and friends that we are all collecting along the way. And then in an orderly fashion, semi-orderly fashion, we'd like to invite us all to process out. We will start up here in the front row, and if you could process out from front to back, that would be appreciated. You may go straight out the front door outside and come back around the side door and go downstairs, or you can just turn right and go downstairs. So thank you for being here. Let's take a moment.